So, in my review of scriptures this morning, I wanted to go back and look at things related to many subjects. One is personage and names and how it was done in the days when our master was walking in this world. So, if I start here on Matthew 10, verse 2, I don't know what else here on the screen. I'm not really going to move through that too much. It's just there so that my audio can be a video. Anyhow, 10:2, it says here, "These are the names of the 12 apostles. First Simon, also called Peter, and his brother Andrew. James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John. Philip, and Bartholomew, Thomas, and Matthew the tax collector, son of Matthew the tax collector, James, son of Alphaeus, Lebbaeus, Simon, a member of the Zealot party, and Judas Iscariot, a man who betrayed him. These 12 Yeshua sent out with the following instructions." There's a lot right there. To start, it says, these 12 Yeshua sent out with the following instructions. And so, just to wrap our heads around this is the son of Yahuwah, the son of the creator of all things, his son, sent into this world for the purposes of delivering a message and to do away with the sacrifices, sent out these 12 with the following instructions, which essentially those were commandments. And this is what it says here. "Do not take the road to Gentile lands, and do not enter any Samaritan town, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And as you go, proclaim the message. The kingdom of heaven is upon you. Heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse lepers, cast out devils. You received without cost, give without charge." Wow. Wow. So then I turn over to Acts to look at what it has to say in regard to these men, these 12 men that were appointed by the Son of God, Son of Yeshua, to go to the children, lost sheep of the house of Israel. Okay, so in Acts, actually, it starts real early here at Acts. I believe you pretty much call it Acts 1. Acts 1:9 is where it begins to speak about the acts of the apostles. And I write notes in my scriptures, and mine's like Acts of AA, like the actual apostles. Anyway, I digress. Let's see, where does it start? Right here, I think. Just go ahead and start it at Acts 1:13. "Entering the city, they went to the room upstairs where they were lodging. Peter and John, James and Andrew, Philip and Thomas, Bartholomew and Matthew, James son of Alphaeus, and Simon the Zealot, and Judas son of James. All these were constantly at prayer together, and with them a group of women, including Mary, mother of Yeshua, and his brother. Now, as it says that, I'm thinking that they're talking about Jude, because James is up here. So I'm not seeing the names Saul or Paul among these. However, that doesn't necessarily mean much, because let's see what happens here. Because as it turns out, Judas abandoned his apostleship when he accepted money to betray the Son of God. And there's even something else I learned. It's really interesting about that as well. However, let's see. I'm going to go on here. I'm going to bump down here to Acts 1:19. This became known to everyone in Jerusalem, and they named the property in their own language. Okay, here, I'll back up a little bit more. The property they're talking about is the property that Judas purchased with the 30 pieces of silver that he received for his sin. They named that property in their own land Akeldama, which means blood acre. The text I have in mind, Peter continued, is in the book of Psalms. Let his homestead fall desolate. Let there be none to inhabit it. And again, let another take over his charge. Therefore, one of those who bore us company all the while we had the Lord Yeshua with us, coming and going, from John's ministry of baptism until the day that he was taken up from us, one of those must now join us as a witness to his resurrection. So what it's doing there is it's laying out the prerequisites of what is required for one of the disciples of Messiah to be promoted to an apostle, which is not the same as a disciple. Otherwise, they just call them disciples. And so it goes on to tell a story about that and says that two names were put forward. Joseph, who was known as Barabbas, and who bore the added name of Justus, and Matthias. I'm curious, honestly, about why Jude's not in here. He must have at some point not been there. I don't know what the deal is on that. But anyway, moving forward. Then they prayed and said, Thou Lord, who knowest the hearts of all men, declare which of these two thou hast chosen to receive this office of ministry and apostleship, which Judas abandoned, to go where he belonged. They drew lots, and the lot fell on Matthias, who was then assigned a place among the 12 apostles. Profound. Where is there room in that for Paul? I see no room for Paul as an apostle. It's known that the man who Yeshua came upon in the streets as he was going through picking out disciples, that the man came on him and said, what is required of me? And he says, well, just go sell all your belongings and come and follow me. Give the money to the poor. And he said, oh, goodness, I can't do that. I'm a very wealthy man. And so Paul had his opportunity to spend the time daily learning from the teacher of the word of Yahuwah, the one who he sent. And that leads me into another point. Let me look into my notes for just a moment here. I'll scroll the screen up a little bit where y'all can confirm some of what I'm saying. So there's that. Let me go on over to Acts 1. There we go. Okay. So in my own notes, I found it interesting that it had mentioned Judas Iscariot, and then later in Acts it's Judas, son of James. And I'm noticing that in the days of Yeshua, men had what we would call a Christian name, a name, and that was it. If there were two in a group that had the same name, amongst one another, they would differentiate one versus the other by associating them to what seems like one of a few different options. For example, they might say that either a descriptive role of what they are known for, like Matthew the tax gatherer, and I think that was stated for many reasons, but it's because later when Matthias, which is close to Matthew, becomes one of the 12, they're differentiating between which one of these two that we're speaking about. The same with how they do with James. And so, sometimes it might be a place, like, for example, Yeshua of Nazareth. And I think that there's more to that of Nazareth than we've understood in the past. So I'm taking another look at that myself. It's in my notes here. And I'm learning to, well, first off, not learning, I know that one of the many, many lies that we are told is, and shame on us for not just being intelligent and using our own senses, is that Latin is a dead language. Well, if Latin is a dead language, then how come the name of everything given scientifically is a Latin term? Latin is far from a dead language. As a matter of fact, them removing Latin 101 from our educational process is part of why we're now retarded. It's how come we fall under motor vehicle codes when most 99.9999% of us, we don't even have any motors in our cars or trucks or whatnot. It's mostly engines that use gas. Things like this. So anyways, moving on. So it's either son of, a single name, or a name followed by a description of a role or a place. And that's how people are described in the scriptures. We've got James, son of Zebedee. So with the Latin now, I want to go back and look at this term, Akeldama, the name that talks about the blood acre, and break that down, as well as Issachar. which is a description of Judas who betrayed, because that wasn't his last name. He was Judas, son of James. This whole business of last name is a scam, in my opinion, upon mankind that is part of how we are trapped into personage. And that's really what I find a lot, the vast majority of the New Testament scriptures to be specifically about personage. So moving forward here, what are my other questions? Publican is in one place called tax gatherer, but I want to go back and do the Latin and break it down and see what are they specifically saying. And in doing so, if you translate the English to the Latin and then back to the English and back to the, you can really get a lot out of a word study that way. I'm learning. So, we've also got Simon. Now he's differentiated because Simon, whom they also called Peter. We know that this name was from Yeshua. But there's also Simon the Zealot, which interestingly enough, in another version of scriptures is called, and this is very interesting, Simon the Canaanite. That Yeshua would choose a Canaanite as one of the 12 is very interesting. And the only place I see any business, and I'm assuming this was probably to do with something maybe someone did later, I'm not sure about this, but definitely a word study here from Strong's G2280 on Thaddeus, because this is the only place where it suggests anything like a surname is for Lebbaeus, whose surname was Thaddeus, is one version of the scriptures that I found. Let's see, Matthew 10, 5 through 7 and 8 equals Paul is upside down and backwards here. I'm not sure when he was talking about being an apostle to which God he was speaking, even, to be honest. I don't know. However, I do know that in Matthew 10, 5 through 7, let me get my own scriptures opened up again. I'm distracted and got it closed, so give me just a minute. I know I've already read it, but I want to read it again because I think it's important. These 12 Yeshua sent out with the following instructions. Do not take the road to the Gentile lands, and do not enter the Samaritan town, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And as you go, proclaim the message, the kingdom of heaven is upon you, O house of Israel. I added that part. Heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse the lepers, cast out devils. You receive without cost, give without charge. I don't see anything in there about taking the message to the Gentiles. I don't see any room in here where in heaven is there a pillar designed to support a throne to represent the tribe, which would hold an apostle, the 13th apostle for Paul. I just feel like if Paul, who proclaims himself to be an apostle, wishes to be the 13th apostle, that we should allow him to say whatever he wants. He's free to do this. And if he finds his way into the kingdom of heaven, he can rule from the floor, because he's not going to have a throne. There's 12 for 12 actual apostles. AA. The noise in the background came on and disturbed me. I'm sorry about that. I'm going to stop it right here. I think I've kind of said what I intended to say.